Imagine a world without you.
Life is Strange is a 2015 narrative adventure game by Don't Nod Entertainment and Square Enix. It is set in the fictional town of Arcadia Bay, Oregon, and centers around the character Max Caulfield and her supernatural journey into saving lives and reversing fate as she tries to connect with an old friend named Chloe, as well as have interactions with the others around town. It is episodic in nature and was released in multiple parts as the year went on, and has spawned multiple sequels, spin offs, and even books. The series has become known as one of the great narrative adventure games, and has a new game coming out later, kind of in the middle of next month, called Life is Strange Double Exposure, which is a direct follow-up to this first game. Today we're going to be talking about the first game in the series, the original Life is Strange, and let's find out exactly what makes it so special. The story of Life is Strange centers around Max Caulfield, a young adult at an artsy college in Arcadia Bay, Oregon. She works alongside her childhood best friend, Chloe Price, as well as others around town, to solve the mystery of a missing girl named Rachel Amber. And on top of that, she just happens to have superpowers, specifically the power to rewind time. This is a game set in a very realistic world that centers around very unrealistic supernatural events. And the story showcases this really well. It gives you a lot of events and moments throughout the game that are very real. Whether for just people around this age, young adults just exiting high school, exiting that stage of their life and into adulthood. Whether it be just the whirlwind of emotions they're going through, or having to deal with finding their way in life, and stuff like that. It's a really great game for showcasing that kind of thing. But the story, like I mentioned, does focus on Rachel Amber. Rachel Amber is a missing girl who has connections with Chloe Price and various other characters in the narrative. She has gone missing and no one knows where she is, so your goal is to try and figure out what's going on. You're trying to work as Max to communicate with everyone to try and find her, because Chloe, like I mentioned, has a connection to her. And at reconnecting with Chloe after Max has moved back to Arcadia Bay causes her to kind of get wrapped up in this mystery as well. Throughout the game, you go out through these different narrative points of interest, interacting with the different characters and trying to find out what they know about Rachel. Trying to find out if they know what happened to her or where she had been prior to her disappearance, who she had interacted with. And most of the narrative is told, again, episodically. Each episode kind of has its own beats that it follows, its own specific story, and focuses on different points in the characters' relationships with each other and in what they're going through in order to solve this mystery. It's really well done and gives us a lot of depth to not only the characters, but this fictional town. We get to see a lot of it from the perspective of Max, of course, but even to a degree, we get to see what Chloe views on it, and what characters like Warren and various other characters, how they see the town and how it affects them, how the interactions with all of the different people there affect them. This story really goes into all of the different characters, whether for better or worse, showcasing how much depth and intrigue they have. And it starts off slow, it starts off very simple. You're really getting to know things, but it starts to ramp up as it goes along. Each episode gets more and more intense, more and more exciting, to the point where it actually gets kind of scary. It actually gets kind of frightening. Not in a horror kind of way, but again, a more realistic sense. It's freaky what's happening and what you're finding out. It actually becomes really disturbing by the end. And once you start to realize what's really going on in Arcadia Bay, it really hits a strong note. The story just succeeds on pretty much all levels, and it's one of the big things that made people just fall in love with this game. It gives you just a lot of things that are relatable while also making it pretty fantastical with these supernatural powers and whatnot. And I think that's just the strength of the entire series that we'll cover as we continue to go along in these reviews. But this first one really just nailed it right out of the bat. But it's not just the story that makes this game so great. What about the characters? The true appeal of Life is Strange is absolutely its characters. It's the one thing about this game that people have latched onto more than anything else. Max Caulfield is a very relatable, likable, and interesting main character. She's nerdy, she's goofy, she's very shy and awkward, but the things she's kind of into relate to people of our generation, people of the millennial generation who would have been around or maybe a little over her age at the time this game came out. We're into stuff like anime and weird films and video games, and she's also into photography, something I personally can connect to, being an amateur photographer and videographer. But she also showcases a lot of regrets, a lot of mistakes that she has gone through and done. And we see kind of both the good sides and the bad sides to her. She's not a perfect person. She doesn't go out of her way to do anything wrong or bad or mean, but she feels like she's just kind of stumbling into it on accident every now and again. And it unfortunately has hurt some of the people around her. And of course, your choices do matter. What you do can affect the outcome of certain things, which I'll get into later. But we see that she is typically a good-natured kid who's trying to do the best she can and just not always succeeding. Meanwhile, you have Chloe Price, kind of the secondary main character, the deuteragonist of this game. Chloe is troubled, and her entire character centers around how troubled she is. She is an asshole. She's manipulative. She's just a terrible friend. She's extremely toxic. And she's just not a good influence on Max. But this is intentional. She's supposed to be like that because of events that has happened to her in the past, as well as things going on in the present. She's not in a good place, and unfortunately is making that everybody else's problem. She is a beloved character because of how flawed she is, though. Because of how much trouble she has in her life, you feel bad for her. You want to save her and to help her. But a lot of people, unfortunately, do ignore her toxicity as well and try to treat her like this baby girl character, and I can't get behind that. You have to see both sides of that. If you're going to want to, like, save her and see her as, like, a good character just waiting to come forth, you have to acknowledge the pains and the troubles that she's causing with her current personality. Her sad backstory can explain her actions, but they don't excuse them. She is still responsible for her own actions, and she's not doing well with that. She's not the best person. She's just not. And that's, again, part of the appeal. That's part of the point with her character. You also have Warren Graham, who is a likable sidekick character to Max at points and acts as a potential love interest to her. A lot of people say Warren is very bland and boring, but I disagree. I think he's simple. He's very basic. There's not like a huge amount of hidden depth to him, but he doesn't need to be anything more than that. A lot of people in real life don't have a lot of hidden depth to them. They just are who they are. And Warren is kind. He's funny. He's extremely nice and protective. He's a loving person who just wants his friends to be safe and wants his friends to be happy. He's a good guy. You also have David Madsen. David Madsen is the security guard at the school that our main character is attending. He's kind of an asshole, and he also has reasons for being an asshole, like Chloe, but is less sympathetic in regards to it. David is one of the antagonists of the game. I wouldn't call him the straight up villain, but he definitely is a problem. And you get to see that at multiple points in his interactions with various characters throughout the game. You also get to interact with a bunch of other characters, other students, the principal of the school, various characters around town, such as Frank and Chloe's mother, Joyce. And throughout this, you really get to understand this town through the characters. The character work is impeccable, and this shines just so wonderfully through its main villain. I'm not going to reveal who the main villain is, but he is... That's my only clue, by the way, that it is a he. He is the absolute fucking worst. And in the best way possible. He's an absolute atrocious person. He's vile and evil. He's disturbing as fuck. And some people can guess who he is very early in the game. Some people, it comes as more of a surprise. But he is absolutely like the most terrible person in the first Life is Strange. He's a scummy, evil, vile sack of shit, to put it simply. And I kind of like that when your villain isn't redeemable in any way. He's just evil. He's just a bad guy. And they don't try to make him anything more. And I like that. I appreciate that. It makes his actions feel more threatening throughout the game. And especially once you find out what's going on, it makes him come across as the scariest person this game could possibly have within this realistic world. It's really excellently portrayed. But on top of that, we also have to go over some amazing gameplay. This game is a narrative adventure game, meaning most of the gameplay involves you walking around, examining clues, talking to characters, and making choices. Some of those choices have a timer, some of them not as much. But that's the kind of game this is. It's not a game where you have a lot of different controls to worry about. It's not a game where you have to worry about like the intricacies of the gameplay. It's very simple, and it's meant to be. The gameplay focuses on having you make decisions, figuring out which decision is the best one based on your rewind ability. Since you can rewind time, you get to kind of check out different choices you can make and kind of choose which one you think is the best. Some of these choices don't really have a good option. It's just a matter of which option you think kind of works better. Sometimes both options can have negative consequences. It's up to you which one is the best one to go with at the time. Now, some of these choices are more important than others. Some of them affect how the game goes, and some of them affect how the characters perceive you. And then there's the Kate choice. This is, without question, in my eyes, one of, if not the most important choice you make in the game. It involves a character named Kate Marsh and involves a very precarious situation that actively affects her future in the game. I'm, again, not going to go into heavy details here, but it is one of the most, if not the most tense moment in the game, for me at least. And if you do things wrong, or if you didn't like find certain things in previous scenes and everything, it won't end up well, and it will make you regret all of your life choices and be very, very sad. It is a very intense scene. It is extremely emotional, and is, in my opinion, the best scene in this game. In this first Life is Strange game, no other scene, in my opinion, beats this one in terms of its emotional story and character impact. And it all depends on the gameplay. It all depends on, again, the things that you found while looking around in different scenes prior to that, the little bits of dialogue that you've unlocked through that, things that you remember from notes you've read and everything. So as you're going along, as you're playing through the game, you want to try and find whatever you can. You want to look around each scene you're in, each location, and get the information you can for various reasons, such as this. It allows you to open up different paths in a way. The gameplay plays, again, very simply, but not in a bad way. I think it's exactly what this kind of game requires. Narrative adventure games are a genre of game that some people don't really like as much because they like games where there's actual more controls and gameplay and whatnot in it. But a lot of us like the story, like the characters, and that's more important. The actual gameplay being simple and easy is not really a concern, because it's more about the mystery, and it's more about utilizing our detective skills to find things around the environment as we play. So the gameplay, again, very simple, but it's exactly what it needs to be. Let's talk about the visuals, though. Having come out in 2015, this game has a specific stylistic look. A lot of the graphics don't really hold up perfectly compared to games now, near 10 years later. But they don't really need to. Again, with the style that this game goes with, it really kind of lives up to what it needs to be. And for those who do want something a little more clean and polished, there has been a recent remaster that has come out that has completely upgraded the visuals of the game. But I don't have an issue with how it looked in 2015 because I think stylization is important to video games. Looking for and trying to achieve perfect realism is something that I think games should stop really trying to do. Stylization allows for a more memorable visual experience, in my eyes. It makes it more interesting, makes it more memorable, makes it more fun to play and look at. If you're just going for realism, why not just watch a movie? But the visuals, like I said, sometimes the lip sync doesn't hold up exactly well. Sometimes some of the characters' eye movements or head movements or hand movements are a little weird and wonky. But I feel like that's kind of part of the charm of the game. It kind of has, again, this style, this feeling to it that really stands out, that really feels unique and interesting, something you really haven't seen in other games. It really gives it kind of this rustic, small town feel, which really fits in with the narrative, with the characters, and the setting. I think that it really nails that kind of aesthetic and kind of makes it feel like its own thing. And not that being a little better, a little more polished is bad, because the recent remaster has definitely kept this style while improving on the overall graphical quality. And I think that's pretty neat. But for me, I personally prefer the original look from 2015 and think it just has a charm all of its own. But the visuals are good. How about the soundtrack? One of the best parts of Life is Strange is easily the soundtrack. The music in this game has amazing vibes to it. It is homely, it is small town, it is kind of like this soft, poppy, woodsy kind of sound to it. It feels very comforting. It's like the soundtrack just gives you a warm hug, holds you tight, and says it's gonna be okay. That's how I view the music in this. And one of the songs has especially stuck with me throughout the years that I listen to just randomly on its own without even having to be connected to the game at all. The song is called To All of You by Syd Matters. It is just an absolutely stunningly beautiful song with a lot of great emotional resonance to it in regards to the game as well as just real life. It's a really, really soft, beautiful, lovely song that is just so nice to listen to. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just so nice to listen to. It plays at the beginning of the game, and it's just so memorable. It is the song I think about when I think about Life is Strange. And all of the rest of the music really fits this vibe as well. Even when it gets a little more intense in the game, it still kind of keeps that feeling. It keeps that kind of like homegrown, hometown, good vibes kind of style to it. It's trying to still tell you that it's going to be okay, even in those moments of disparity, even in those moments of fear, those moments of intense emotion. And I appreciate that. Even at its most chaotic, the soundtrack really just works for the location that this game takes place in. It works for the characters, for the story. And it's something that you don't hear in other games. A lot of games will have like these exciting, fast, rockin' soundtracks. Or some games like Undertale will have these memorable like chiptune songs. But then you have this and it's just like soft rock, these kind of like almost ballad like songs, good homely folk music, that kind of stuff. And it's so memorable and so lovely. It really, really sells the just overall vibes of the game excellently. The soundtrack is, without question, one of the highlights of this game. Despite being released almost 10 years ago, Life is Strange holds up exceptionally well. It is a beautiful game with an amazing setting, phenomenal characters, and a just wonderfully emotional story that really hits in all the right ways thanks to a fantastic soundtrack and great visuals. It, on every level, still works despite its age, and while not everything may be perfect, it is still something that really has defied the odds and become a massive classic in the world of gaming. I personally would give this a 5 out of 5 stars. I think it is just that good of a game and has really stood the test of time. But tell me in the comments below, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the first Life is Strange game? What do you think of the remastered graphics that have come out recently? And are you just as excited to see Max's journey continue in Life is Strange Double Exposure this October? Let me know your thoughts down below, and for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.